Oh. So behind me is the grave of Yellowstone Kelly. Born Luther Kelly in 1849, so he set out yet west when he turned man and made his name for a scout. I can't read this. I'll have to do a voiceover. Today we're going to dive into the life of one of the most intriguing characters of the American West, Yellowstone Kelly. Born in 1849 in New York, he was raised in an affluent family and attended private schools. But as a teenager, Kelly's adventurous spirit led him to the West, where he became a trapper, hunter, and a scout. He was interested in joining the U.S. Army and fighting the Civil War, but he was too young. He would later write that he deplored the fact that his youth rendered him unfit for military service. So he tricked recruiters. Young Kelly placed a note in his shoe with the number 18 written on it, so he could honestly swear that he was over 18. Kelly was able to sign on as a regular Army soldier. Private Kelly's term of service was 3 years. With the Civil War in its final months, the 10th Infantry was sent to Richmond and then marched on to Washington, D.C., where Private Kelly served as a guard during the Great Victory Parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. In November 1865, the 10th Infantry deployed to Fort Snelling, Minnesota for the winter, relieving a volunteer regiment. The following spring, Kelly's company moved into the forts in the Dakotas, where he became a company hunter, providing fresh game. In the late 1860s, Kelly found himself in the Powder River region, where he worked as a civilian scout for the U.S. Army during the Indian Wars. His bravery and resourcefulness earned him a reputation as one of the best scouts in the West. Kelly later became a trusted friend of the legendary Sioux chief Sitting Bull. Here's a story that earned Kelly his reputation for fighting and bravery. Kelly volunteered to carry dispatches to Fort Stephenson, approximately 50 miles down the Missouri River. The route between the forts was considered so dangerous due to the presence of Sioux warriors that mail carriers were generally accompanied by a cavalry escort, but Kelly was alone. He arrived safely at Fort Stephenson, then set out on his return journey, spending the night at the camp of Bloody Knife and a Rickaree chieftain. The next morning, Kelly was ambushed by 2 Sioux warriors. The first wounded Kelly's horse with a rifle, while the second shot Kelly in the knee with an arrow. Kelly managed to shoot and kill the first attacker quickly, but the second took cover behind a tree. Kelly eventually shot and killed his second assailant, then returned to Bloody Knife's camp to tell the story. Kelly spent a few days at Bloody Knife's camp recovering from his wound, then rode back to Fort Buford, becoming something of a hero and a local celebrity for defeating his 2 assailants. In his memoirs, Kelly noted next that he roamed the Judas Basin of Montana for many years, especially during the crucial period between 1870 and 1880, when the Indian Wars were heating up. He became renowned as both a hunter and a scout, hunting elk, buffalo, and antelope. In fact, he even adopted a baby antelope in the late spring of 1876. And was bringing it back to his ranch in the basin when news of the little bighorn reached him. Leaving the antelope with his friends, he rejoined the army and was a prominent scout under General Cook in the pursuit of Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. Kelly stayed in the army after the suppression of the Sioux and the surrender of Crazy Horse, and in the following year, scouting once more for the army in their pursuit of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce. Kelly would even go on to be a guide for the 1889 U.S. Army Alaska expedition. The following year, Kelly received a commission as captain, this time with the Army's 40th Volunteers. Following Congress's authorization for an increase in the Army by 35,000 men to put down the insurgency developing in the Philippines, which took place after the U.S. annexed the Philippines following the conclusion of the American-Spanish War. Kelly's company was under the command of Brigadier General James Bell, who had served with Kelly during the Nez Perce campaigns of the Indian Wars. Captain Kelly's company arrived at the island of Luzon and began their march inland to clear the area of insurgents. Kelly's company met heavy resistance. During one engagement, insurgents under the command of Colonel Legaspi opened fire on Kelly's advancing infantrymen with 2 field guns, but Kelly's men managed to kill the enemy artillerymen and silence the guns. With heavy foliage flanking the enemy's position, Kelly led a frontal assault and routed them. In the process, Kelly captured Legaspi's ceremonial Spanish sword. Kelly later served in the admission of the new civilian governor of the Philippines, future President William Howard Taft. By 1903, Kelly wrote to a friend, "I would have been in the Philippines so long, 3 years. This country is a wearing one. My health is excellent, but 3 years is the limit." On November 15, 1903, Kelly was relieved of his duties in the Philippines and ordered to report back to Washington, D.C. for his next assignment as an Indian agent for the San Carlos Indian Reservation in Arizona. In 1909, President Theodore Roosevelt convened his famous tennis cabinet for a farewell luncheon at the White House. Among the 31 members who had been closely associated with him were advisors and companions, such as Deadwood Sheriff Captain Seth Bullock, Chief of the Forest Service Guilford Pinchot, and Captain Luther S. Kelly. Yellowstone Kelly. Teddy Roosevelt had first met Yellowstone Kelly on the Little Missouri in the president's years of roughing it in the West. After challenging years at San Carlos and a half a century of government service, Kelly moved on to more adventures, mining gold in Nevada and eventually settling on a small farm in California, where he died on December 17, 1928. The old frontiersman transcended the typical adventurous pioneer. His duration of service and his insightful observations and ability to record them in his memoirs set him apart. With his words, "I feel my body will be better rested in Montana," Yellowstone Kelly was buried with full military honors on the Kelly Mountain, on the high rim rocks overlooking the Yellowstone River just north of Billings. And that's the life of Yellowstone Kelly. Thanks for watching.